There's a specific kind of peace that settles in during a late-night walk or a 2 a.m. drive. The streets are quiet, the world feels still, and we let our guard down because we assume we are completely alone. But that assumed isolation is a dangerous psychological blind spot. The dead of night doesn't actually empty the world. It merely conceals whoever is still awake. This diagram illustrates spatial logic, mapping how nighttime vulnerability is dictated by three psychological safety zones. At the center is our sanctuary, intimate, private spaces where we expect total control. As we push outward, safety decays into the liminal zone, and finally, the forbidden zone. True nighttime horror doesn't come from the supernatural. It happens when the hidden rules of these spaces are violently broken by unpredictable human threats. Consider a 40-year welder who lives entirely alone on a massive isolated farm. With only his dog for company since his wife passed away, his sprawling property functions as the ultimate sanctuary space. Returning from a late-night walk, he looks up at the second story and spots a brief shadow moving in the window. It's the bedroom he used to share with his wife, a room that has been completely untouched for years. Over the next few nights, the threat escalates inside his own home. He hears creaking floors, finds kitchen lights turned on, and finally forces himself to check that upstairs bedroom. When he opens the door, his late wife's packed clothes are scattered everywhere, and a strange, unidentified woman is standing right in the doorway, staring back at him. Operating on pure adrenaline, he charges her. The intruder bolts down the stairs, crashes out the front door, and vanishes entirely into the expansive, pitch-black acreage of the farm. Even worse, she doesn't leave. A few nights later, he looks out his living room window and spots her standing silently in the yard, watching him. He fires warning shots to drive her off, but he is now trapped in a state of perpetual armed anxiety, sleeping with a rifle next to his bed. This entirely violates the sanctuary rule. The horror here is the psychological destruction of home. When your ultimate safe space becomes the source of the threat, you have nowhere left to retreat. Now, look at the liminal space. These are temporary zones, like 2 a.m. drive-thrus or empty parking lots, spaces designed for passing through, where no one is meant to linger. A late-night caterer driving home exhausted pulls into a deserted McDonald's drive-thru for some food. He notices an anomaly, a beat-up Volkswagen with tinted windows, backed into a corner spot, just sitting there in the dark. Looking for a place to eat, the caterer drives to an isolated, empty nature preserve down the street from his house. Moments after he parks, a set of headlights pulls into the pitch-black gravel lot behind him. It is the exact same tinted Volkswagen. What happens next defies logic. 4 men step out of the vehicle simultaneously. They don't speak, they don't play music, they just stare at each other before silently following the caterer and his friend up the mountain path. After an uncomfortable confrontation at the peak with 3 of the men, the caterer realizes the math is wrong. He spots the 4th man hiding in the dark trees, holding an unknown object. The moment they lock eyes, the man in the trees moves, triggering a desperate sprint down the mountain to escape. The next day, the caterer reports the incident and discovers the truth. The ringleader was an unhinged former McDonald's employee. He had been fired and was violently violating a restraining order by camping out in the parking lot to stalk his ex-girlfriend. This reveals the concept of collateral terror within a liminal space. The horror is pure randomness. The caterer wasn't the intended victim. He simply became a target by existing in the wrong transitional space at the wrong time. Finally, we reach the forbidden space, deliberately closed-off environments where humans are the intruders. Take the story of a group of teenagers seeking late-night thrills by sneaking into a boarded-up, abandoned church in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. The geography of the building was deeply unsettling. The entire first floor was just raw dirt, with a jagged hole in the center where a concrete staircase descended into a pitch-black, multi-room basement. As they explore the basement with flashlights, a heavy door in an adjacent room violently slams shut on its own. The sheer force of it prompts half the group to immediately sprint back up the stairs and flee. The 3 remaining teens decide to investigate. Behind the slammed door, they find an eerie vintage wedding photo on a dresser. But the real threat is on the cracked mirror above it.
It is covered in thick, sticky red stains that haven't dried yet. Realizing someone is down there with them, they bolt. After a panicked escape over an 8-foot chain link fence, they turn back to look at the church, only to see a human silhouette watching them from the open window. This is the psychological inversion of the forbidden space. The teens went in seeking to be rebellious explorers, but the horror strikes when they realize they walked directly into the territory of a deeply disturbed apex predator. Whether it is your private sanctuary, a liminal parking lot, or a forbidden basement, the ghosts in these environments are never supernatural. The truth is simpler and much colder. The darkness does not create monsters. It merely provides cover for hostile, deeply disturbed human beings who are already operating on the fringes of society. So, the next time you find yourself enjoying the peace and quiet of a dark, empty house, or a desolate midnight drive, keep your guard up, because isolation is almost always an illusion.